And it prompts us to call on the man who broke that story once again, General Paul Vallely, the general Skyping in once again from Big Sky Country in Montana. Paul, welcome back to America's Forum.
Well, thank you, JD. Happy to be back again.
Now, when we got together Friday, it wasn't the big sky of Montana, it was the skies over Syria. ISIS gaining control of an airfield. Again, you gave us that information Friday. The rest of the media caught up by about Sunday. And we need to explore this more. With ISIS in control of the airfield and the aircraft there, does it in fact become a game changer in this military conflict in favor of ISIS?
Well, it could well be that. It depends whether they have the pilots or can get the pilots that can fly those aircraft. And of course, they have the money to pay and recruit pilots who can fly those MiGs. But the other thing, there were man pads there, shoulder-fired missiles evidently, that were captured as well. So we don't know what else they have, but whatever assets or inventory they had at that airfield at Tokba, they surely have them all now and will be able to use them at some point in time.
General, ostensibly, when the military gets its orders from the commander-in-chief, the military salutes and says, yes, sir, and tries to implement those orders. I have no doubt that same constitutional framework is at work, but it's been kind of curious. The case of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Martin Dempsey, General Dempsey, said one thing in Washington the other day, and then in Kabul yesterday, he had this to say about ISIS in Syria. Quote, clearly the picture we have of ISIS on the Iraqi side is a more refined picture. The existence and activities of ISIS on the Syrian side, we have some insights into that, but we certainly want to move forward to have more insights that as we craft a way forward. Kind of garbled syntax, but it appeared that General Dempsey was retreating from his statements of, what was it, last Thursday, about ISIS being a clear and present danger to the United States, and we're trying to get to that. Your take on perhaps the politics involved. Did the general get out in front of the commander-in-chief?
Well, here again, politics is overriding the realities of war and national security. So it was obvious that General Dempsey walked back his comments made last Thursday regarding the threat of ISIS, not only in the region, but external to that, even to Israel and the United States. But you know, this president continues to tread in all these gray areas of constitutional authority. And I am just taken back that our four-star generals won't stand up more and should not be walked back, and they should not allow themselves to be walked back when it comes to national security and threats against the United States. Someone's got to stand up in that Pentagon and stand firm against these near-term threats of ISIS.
Well, talking aside, we understand the president has authorized manned and unmanned flights, sending the drones in for surveillance purposes over Syria. What could that portend for expansion of the conflict or America's role?
Well, like I said last week, the border of Iraq and Syria is irrelevant at this time because of the movement and the caliphate being established by ISIS. So we should always, and I'm sure even before we were doing satellite overhead intelligence surveillance of that entire area, but now when you put in some of the F-16s or the drones, then we get some more validity to any kind of intelligence that we can find and pick up of the locations and movement of the ISIS forces. But there again, General Dempsey needs to be able to issue the order to take those assets out within Syria. And even if they're coordinating with Assad, it's good to get those assets taken care of. Assad can be dealt with later on. But again, here is where we need to support the proxy force of the Free Syrian Army because they're on the ground and they're the eyes and ears we need to work with.
Walk us through some of this, Paul, because you just mentioned Assad, and it appears there, what's the old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Things have changed very quickly as different characters, different threats have emerged. You talk about eventually dealing with Assad, but in terms of the picture, are we aligning right now conceivably with the Iranians in what is shaking out here?
It depends how you look at the chessboard there. Iran is the #1 supporter of Assad, and of course, this has been the threat within the Middle East, and Russia supporting Assad as well. But again, we need to support the Free Syrian Army over there, because they will in fact be able to counter ISIS in some manner, as well as the Assad forces.
But here comes the problem, and you see it, but I'm going to articulate it. You've got the Free Syrian Army. You've got Assad. What is to prevent Assad, who's already used chemical weapons on his own people, the FSA, Free Syrian Army, helping us? This is a situation where you could see real problems for the FSA, could you not?
Oh, absolutely. And they have been a problem ever since Al-Qaeda entered into the war zone over there in Syria 2 years ago when I was there. So that is a threat. But here again, we don't have to coordinate with Assad. We should be actually, as I said, looking at those borders as irrelevant. And we have to continue to take out any kind of targets or movement that are trans-border operations from Syria to Iraq, Iraq back to Syria. Also, JD, a kill and capture order has been put out for Baghdadi, the head of the ISIS forces. And we have some other occurrences against the caliphate going on in Africa, against Libya by the Egyptian Air Force and the United Arab Emirates. So some of these other countries seem to be standing up to this Islamic threat.
So and let's just pursue that for just a second. The UAE and Egypt using airstrikes. Do you welcome this development? Does it portend a pan-Arab approach against ISIS?
Absolutely, because not only do you have that caliphate going on up in the Iraq-Syria area in the Levant, but remember the Levant goes all the way down to Egypt. So you have another caliphate region being established in Africa as we speak, with Boko Haram and some of the others down there, but also the increased violence and the increased influence that Al-Qaeda has in Libya. So you're looking at several fronts over there. Now, that's why it's important that Saudi Arabia, and as Egypt and the United Arab Emirates have stood up, for Jordan and others to stand up against these growing Islamic forces over there, because they're out to destroy them as well as us.
General, a couple of minutes remain, and we don't want to leave people with the impression that it's only General Dempsey walking back statements. You may recall back in January, President Obama called ISIS, quote, JV. Well, yesterday there was a slightly, actually a profoundly different approach taken at the White House by Presidential Press Secretary Josh Earnest. Let's take a listen, then get your reaction.
The President has not made a decision to pursue any sort of military action in Syria. I can also tell you, as I mentioned earlier, that the Department of Defense has personnel who are responsible, as they can tell you, for ensuring that the Commander-in-Chief has access to the kinds of plans and contingencies that he may need if necessary.
A minute and a half remains, Paul. Translate White House ease into the way you understand it.
Well, I mean, again, JD, the bottom line here is we have a president and a national security team in the White House that not only does not know how to conduct proper foreign national security or national security for us even at our borders, but he's totally inept at warfare. We are in a war. We are threatened by these forces into America, crossing our borders, into our airports now.
Paul,
and
less than a minute. Less than a minute, and I have to get to this from you to see what you've heard about it. Reports yesterday, ISIS may have drones of their own. Can you substantiate that?
No, I cannot, but I certainly can follow up and see what we can find out over there through the teams over there with the FSA.
And this morning's takeaway, kill or capture orders directly for al-Baghdadi, correct?
Correct.
All right, so that's important news. You kind of wonder if that had not been a standing order, but with an administration lacking a clear mission, that is significant. Paul Vallely, as always, we thank you for your insights and your reports. We'll have you back real soon.
Thank you, JD and John. It's a pleasure always.
All right, General Paul Vallely there. Coming up next, my former colleague in the House, Pete Hoekstra, dissects all of this with our daily intelligence briefing. That's coming up.